Now, I'm going to get right into what we'll be speaking about today, and that is self-concept. And I've given it a subtitle, which is the leadership spirit of a positive concept, self-concept, or you can call it the power of a positive self-concept. Now, the last time when we spoke about the leadership spirit, we said that is an attribute, that is a potential that is common to every human. That is to say, everyone has leadership potential resident within. That may be manifesting itself at the moment, or it may not. But whatever the case, you and I have leadership potential residing within us. Now, we went on from there to say that, yes, as far as, or in as much as we have the leadership potential within us, it may not see the light of day. And that's because the leadership potential, which we call the leadership spirit, depends on something else in order to function. This will remind me very quickly about a computer system or a TV. Now, you can have your computer system that has all the hardware components that are extremely powerful, but those components will not function unless you have a software that will drive every part of that computer system. So the software drives all of the hardware. So in the same vein, the spirit of leadership, or what I would like to call the leadership attitude, is what must be cultivated for leadership potential to materialize. So leadership spirit, the spirit of leadership in order to manifest itself. Now, I think we also touched on this very quickly. Last 2 weeks ago, that you can never lead beyond your attitude and self-belief, meaning that leadership is fundamentally a question of attitude and what you believe about yourself. And what do we mean by attitude? We are talking about, the manifestation of your personal philosophy. That simply means that all that you believe about yourself is actually what manifests itself day to day. So it's impossible to lead beyond the attitude that you have and what you actually believe about yourself. Now, when we talk about leadership, the temptation is that, people will start thinking about other people, controlling people, directing people, telling people what to do, and all that. Now, let's put that aside for a minute, and consider that leadership actually has nothing. Well, fundamentally, leadership has nothing to do with other people. The leadership we're talking about is the one that hinges on personal leadership, which is a cultivation of the attitude and belief system that is requisite for the leadership potential in us to manifest. So we mentioned a moment ago, that your attitude is just a manifestation of your personal philosophy. But understand this, that your philosophy is simply a product of the ideas that you have within. Now, when we talk about ideas, you and I know this, that something is feeding the ideas that we have. Right from childhood. In fact, maybe from the womb, our parents speak to us, the environment speak to us. We are being shaped into something. There's certain ideas are pre-programmed in us, and some are programmed afterwards. And these are the things that shape our belief system, because we can only believe what comes our way in the form of information. So that's where you see in the scriptures where it says that as a man thinks in his heart, so is the man. The thinking does not happen anywhere else but in the heart. The heart here, let's let's consider that very, very quickly. That is simply the seat of all thoughts and ideas resident within a human. Thoughts and ideas reside within you. That is your heart. All right. I'm not talking about the engine that is in the chest. I'm talking about the one right between our ears. As a man thinks in his heart, so is the man. And my heart is where all our beliefs and all that we are educated in is kept. Now, we're going to see briefly the impact of education in all of this, product of our education. Let me just quickly welcome Tenny. Tenny, welcome to the call. It's good to see you as ever.
Thanks, Clay. It's good to be on call.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah.
Yes, we have our friends. As a matter of fact, we have Dr. J joining us from and I also have Buki, a darling friend, and Awa joining us from London. So now, you're telling, as I was observing this, most of our education system actually points to something that is external to ourselves. Let me explain that. Our education is about something in the environment, something about a system, an external system, maybe even a government or something. It might even be medicine, which is the study of the body. But somehow it seems to me that we an education about ourselves, an education about self. Now, if you observe this, and I'm sure you have, Tenny, I remember my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, came to visit many years ago, and he was talking to his second son, and he said, "Oh,
Hello.
hello."
Yeah. Hello, Clay. I
I'm sure
can
you
hear
can
you
hear me.
now.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. Now, um, let's make sure that all of our friends are back on the call.
I think it's frozen again. Can you hear me?
Hello,
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 hello, Kule, I can hear
hello.
you.
Yes. I'm not. Hello. I'm not quite sure what. Okay, that's great. I just wonder if all of our friends can hear me.
Yeah, we can use the chat area so that people can chat
Yes.
and just let us know if they can hear.
Okay. Now, if you can hear me, can I request that you just send in a chat just to be sure that you can hear me? I think technology was just acting up a bit. So if you can hear me, kindly um, just send it a chat message or a text message through the chat facility so we can be aware that you hear us. Right. Okay, let's just make sure and then we'll continue. Right. Hello, everyone. Can you still hear me? Oh, fantastic. Yes. So we can be heard, Tenny. Now, I was just saying something. Apologies for that interruption. I think it's something to do with technology. Right. So I was just talking about the sort of education that we've been given nearly all of our lives. In fact, that education continues all through life. And what it does is it prepares us for um, just to sustain ourselves, just to get by. And somehow it's a bit limiting because that education tends to prepare us for employment rather than deployment. So I remember a gentleman many years ago who actually said something about human needs. I think most of us will probably know Abraham Maslow, who spoke about the hierarchy of human needs. And Maslow said that fundamentally we are motivated by physiological needs, meaning that most of us are motivated by hunger and thirst. We want something to eat. Now, on a human level, that is very true because I mean, nearly every employment that we take is so that we can feed ourselves and have water to drink. Then Maslow said that a typical human will move on from there to secure his food and his water. In other words, once you have something to eat or a means of livelihood, then you want to protect it. So he says that we're motivated by safety needs. Then Maslow also went on to say that humans are also motivated by a need to belong to a community or a need to feel loved, a need to have a sense of belonging, right? Now, and then Maslow then says that once you are within a society, then you want to feel important. You want to, as an organization, where something that feeds your ego and your self-esteem. And Maslow then said, only after all this are secured do you actually Are you there? Can you hear me? Yes, Tenny, can you hear me still? Right. I was just saying something about, Maslow hierarchy of needs, which talks about the primary human motivations. Now, the thing is that somehow, if you look at God's own view of the primary human needs, there seems to be some conflict. Um, Now, I'll go through that and we see it. Now, God Himself will say that, our fundamental need is not what to eat. As a matter of fact, He says something about not being motivated by food alone, but by something else. So, God, in His own concept, actually says that number one, we need an awareness of our source. I think it's better for me to share my screen so we can go through this. It says we need an awareness of our source. And then we need an awareness of our self-image. I'm going to go through this in a bit of detail as we progress. That's just ensuring that everyone can hear me. Right. So now it says, number one, an awareness or a relationship with our source. And we'll see why that is important in a moment. Then our self-image. And from there, it talks about our self-worth, our self-esteem, and self-concept. As a matter of fact, you can group all of self-image, self-worth, and self-esteem under self-concept. So what do we mean by an awareness of source or a knowledge of our source? Now, when I'm saying this, I make no allusion to any religious thinking. As a matter of fact, that is not the intention. But then, if you look at God in His own view, in His own view of the human, He says, look, we need a strong awareness of our source because that is really what underlies or underlays our self-concept. Now, and God saying this, He actually made a very important suggestion there or declaration, which is that you and I possess the same nature as our source. Because the source of a thing determines the nature and the character of the thing. So God makes it gives no room to doubt or any contrary opinion when it comes to the origin of human being. Now, you know that there are other counter ideas. Some of them say that human beings came through an evolution system whereby human beings were formerly salamanders, and then they became, more complex structures, and then went through the whole ape transition, and then became man. Well, that is some school of thought advanced that and advocate it. But God, in His own view, says, look, I'm very clear on this, and I leave you in no doubt and no confusion to know that you came right from me. I am your source. Now, that is suggestive in itself. If we do come out of God, then we need to relate to God for sustenance. Okay, a good example. Fishes come out of water, then they need to relate to water to remain alive. Plants come out of the soil and they need to remain attached to the soil, which is their source, to remain alive. So, under no circumstance should we think, or should any human think, that we originate from any other source other than God. So that talks about source, an awareness, an understanding of our source. The second, as it relates to having a healthy self-concept, is a self-image. Now, just a quick definition. Self-image is defined as the idea one has of one's ability, appearance, and personality. I'll put that in very simple context. Self-image is really one's idea, the encapsulation of one's idea about oneself. In other words, this is my nature, this is my characteristic, this is who I am. So self-image always talks about one's sense of identity. Now, the thing to say is that, I can relate this back to the source, that self-image does not originate from the thing, but from its source. So you cannot talk about self-image without an awareness of the source of that thing, be it an inanimate thing or a human being. So your image, the image that you have, your self-image, is exactly the image of your source. In other words, we are talking about nature. So your nature is, and my nature is actually the image of our source. Now, this is logical and understandable, which means it does not need any kind of, if you like, it doesn't need any kind of faith to accept this. It's logical and it is very plain. Okay. Now, if I take a tree, if I create a chair out of an Iroko tree, then we should expect logically that that chair has the strength and the characteristic of the Iroko tree. If I go to a sea, to the seaside now, maybe for people who live in UK, if I go to Blackpool and I take some water from the sea, now if I test that water in any laboratory, I should see the exact nature, the chemical component of what you have in the sea. Now, don't forget about the volume. My cup, the water I have in my cup is just maybe a few, the volume is so little. It's just, a few drips of water compared to the vast ocean. But size, regardless of the size and the volume of the water, they have the same content, they have the same characteristics, they have the same nature. So the salt level in the water that I have in my cup is exactly the same salt level that I have in the sea. Now, the sea cover, a greater, vast expanse of land, yes, and that's fine. The cup, what I have in my cup is just that cup, just that tiny cup. But the nature, the essence, the characteristic, the ability of that water in the cup and in the sea remains exactly the same. I'm trying to say this to put it in a way that it becomes natural, a natural way of thinking. I and my image are one. I and my source have the same nature and the same characteristic. So if you look at the greatest master teacher that ever lived, for him, this was not a matter of having faith. It was not a matter of religious belief. It was just a matter of, well, this is the reality. This is natural. This is logical. I and my source are one. Now, I will just digress a bit. The word father is the Greek word that means Abba or Pater, which means source. So what originates from the source and the source are of one. I'm aware I'm beating that extensively, but I'll carry on. Now you can see a progression here now. We talk about the source, we talk about the self-image, which is a product of the source, and then naturally you can see that the worth, the value of the thing is exactly dependent on the image, on its source, where it came from. So we are talking about self-worth. That self-worth is a sense of one's own value. But that can become subjective unless there is an awareness, a clear awareness and conviction of the source of a thing. Now, let's focus on human now, you and I. Your worth is not dependent on our parentage, as it were, on the country we were born in, but on where we were sourced from. We are sourced from the divine, from God Himself, and therefore we have the image of God, and as a consequence, we have this worth, the same worth of God. I know that we are not talking about the kingdom principles today, but I'm tempted to talk about it very quickly. That is where you hear a statement like, God so loved the world that He gave His own Son. The Son Himself being the exact image and representation of God. So you can only pay the price that is put on a product, on a merchandise. If you are going to buy a loaf of bread, unless you pay me the price that I've put on it, then you cannot take that bread away lawfully. Now, when you compensate me to the value of that piece of bread, then you can take it. You have given me the worth of the bread. So what you pay on a thing determines its worth. So if God pays His Son to reclaim the human race, then it is clear what the worth of the human is. The human is worth His image. So your self-worth really is a sense of your own value. Your sense of worth is derived from an awareness and understanding of your source. Your worth is determined by your source. So, just look at the source. If I make a bracelet from 24 karat gold, the worth of that bracelet is tied to the worth of that of gold. Elizabeth is asking to speak, so just invite you to speak. You can always come on. Now, your worth is determined by your origin, where you came out from. Okay? Now, self-esteem also, is a natural progression from your self-worth, because you can only project yourself based on your worth. Okay? Now, I'm sure most of us will allude to this. If you just bought a suit, for the gentlemen amongst us, if you just bought a suit for, say, 500 pounds, you're not likely to hang it, in the corridor or in the kitchen. You're going to put it in a nice place in your bedroom, somewhere there on your wardrobe. Okay. For the ladies, if you just bought a dinner dress and that you're using for an occasion with the queen, you probably keep it in a place. You're going to project the value of that thing based on its worth. So worth always determines self-esteem. A sense of worth always determines self-esteem. So self-esteem defined is confidence in one's own worth or abilities, which is what determines self-respect. In other words, you're going to respect something based on its value. Okay? So self-esteem is how you value yourself. But I would like you to observe that when it comes to valuing the human, we're talking about self-concept. When it comes to valuing the human, you and I are not given the choice to determine man's value. The value of the human is predetermined by his source, I'm talking about generically, by the source of the human. The value is predetermined, and the expectation of God Himself is that man esteems himself to the tune or to the extent of the valuation that God has put on man. You know, today I was reading the BBC, and I was looking at an initiative that three people kind of started. So it was the Princess Beatrice, I mean, a lady from the royal house, and then the daughter of Richard Branson, and another gentleman. You know, they started this initiative, and all the aim of that initiative is to help people, to prepare them for life. I mean, for life outside of school, and then to help them find their identity. So you will find out that the issue of identity across humans everywhere they are, regardless of the race, of the creed, and of the citizenship that they hold. So it's a human thing. But then you will see that what we are talking about, self-concept, is actually a solution to the issue of identity, self-identity. It has to do with an understanding of your source and an awareness, the image, the nature, the character, the essence of your source, so that you can understand your worth and then project yourself the right way. Right. When I say our source, I mean, let's clearly lay it out. We're talking about God. And he's saying, look, what is man that you so value him, you so honor him? You have imbued him with honor and with glory. And that is the esteem, the measure, the estimate of man in the eyes of God. So now, having laid this foundation, let us now look at rediscovering ourselves, because we can measure ourselves against those criteria which are derived from the original ideas from your discovery of your value. Now, you will notice that in certain circles, people will say, "Oh, don't think about yourself. Don't exalt yourself, as it were." Now, I'm not talking about exalting ourselves, because you don't need to ask fire to burn. If it's fire, it burns. It creates combustion and it produces heat. You don't need to say fire, or don't think of yourself as no. That is self-cancellation. Fire burns. Period. If it is water, you don't need to water will simply flow. In other words, everything behaves according to its nature. If it is a lion, roaring is natural. If a lion does not roar, something is wrong with the nature of lion. The lion is contaminated. So if I'm man made in God's image, then I naturally function as God, and my function should not be a surprise to the ignorant. Now, this issue obviously is something that has been around for a long time, which is why the Greek, in Delphi, in particular, if you go to the temple of Apollos in Delphi, you will see an inscription that is written there, and it says, "Know thyself." So even from ancient times, there's been that desire, that aspiration, that hunger to know the value of human beings. In fact, it predates all of this, because if you look at for people who have the background as I do, when I read through scriptures, if you look at the temptation that was presented to Eve, to humans for the very first time, it was a question of knowing themselves. He said, "Look, when you do so and so, then you will become as your source." It's like saying, when the maize seed does so and so, then to become maize. No, it is already maize. It doesn't need to become maize. It is already maize. It only needs to function as maize. So when you put maize in soil, it will function as maize. Its nature will take over its circumstance. So we don't need to become as God. We already have the image because of where we are sourced from. God did not source mankind from any other source. He didn't say, let's produce man from salamander. Let's produce man from the apes. No, it says, no, let us produce man from ourselves. So you don't need to wonder about the origin and the source of man. So the Greek will say, oh man, know thyself. But then God says, do not wonder about this. I will tell you where man, or what I will give you the knowledge of man. Why? Because mankind, all of man, is made from God's image. You can look at this particular presentation as the biblical source of self-concept. I think that's probably the better way to look at it from the direction we're going. Now, if you look at this, from what I've said, you will realize that when we talk about leadership ability, you will realize that personal leadership originates from a discovery of self. You know, I was saying something about education. You probably wonder why sometimes someone can have a lot of education and still become an employee and still struggles to make ends meet. The reason is this: that education was not an education about self. It was an education about some other things outside of the human beings. So what we need is an education back into ourselves, not an education about soil, about air, about rocks. Now, that is good for the management of our environment, but something precedes that. Is it when God made human beings, the first thing he gave to them is an identity. He said, human beings, listen to this. You came out of me. So be very clear of your source and of your identity, because everything else hinges on that. So your ability to lead is determined by the attitude produced by your self-image, your self-worth, and your self-esteem. Now, you can see why I'm tying this together now. We spoke about the leadership spirit and the spirit of leadership. The leadership spirit is the potential for leadership, the capacity, the inherent ability that resides within every human to lead. But ability is not necessarily reality. For ability to become reality, something else has to kick in, which is the spirit of leadership or the attitude of leadership. So within that context, you will see that your ability to lead is determined by the attitude produced by your self-image, your self-worth, and your self-esteem. To me, it follows so logically. Now, let's look very quickly at the nature of poor self-concept. When someone has poor self-concept, certain things become apparent. Number one, and this is fundamental, it's a sense of inadequacy. It's a sense of feeling or a sense of unworthiness. There's a story that I remember now. It was a time when someone came along and poured, I don't know how much you make in a year. Let's say you make 16,000 pounds a year, or say 10,000 pounds a year. Now, can you imagine investing 10,000 pounds in a perfume? So that perfume must be, if not the best, but among the best in the world. Now, so that jar contains a whole year salary without taxation, gross. So can you imagine pouring that whole year, 1 year salary in a liquid, in a perfume, on someone, and that person says, yeah, bring it on. That's just good. Please, come on, go on. So Jesus did not say, "Oh, I'm not worthy of this. Oh, no, 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 sorry. Let's go and give it to the poor." Yeah, look, he said the poor will always be there and we'll take care of them, but I am worthy of this. So poor self-concept will always manifest in a sense of inadequacy. It will manifest in the need to compensate for that inadequacy. And one of the ways we do that is we probably look at, you know, some measure of, of wellness, of luxury. We try to put down ourselves. For example, I can choose to wear a particular designer shoes just to say that I am, well-to-do. So most of the time, that is compensating for a void inside, for something that is for a sense of inadequacy inside. Now, I'm not saying that we cannot, use the best things, but we understand that a true leader, someone who understands his image, give value to things rather than deriving value from things. So a car does not determine my value. I give value to a car. The car should be excited that I'm riding it. So my value is not derived from a car or from a cloth or from how much I have in my bank account. No, the bank account should be excited, should feel a sense of privilege that I am using it. It goes the other way around. So another way it manifests is seeking external means of value. I think I've said that. And then naturally, there will be the individual will be lacking in confidence. Sometimes people have confidence issues and they cover it with, a kind of brave face. Now, but fundamentally, poor self-concept will manifest itself in lack of confidence. And then the individual will want to, satisfy everyone he sees, want to please everyone. That's called pandering to public opinion, pandering to public evaluation. So, there are many other things, and I'll be happy for you to share those with us. And Buki is saying here, I hope you can hear me. I hope you can hear me now. If you can hear me, please, can you just confirm? Tenny, can you hear me? Adeshewa, can you hear me? Please confirm. Right. Buki says here, the knowledge of who we are is important in knowing self-worth. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Right. We'll carry on. I'm aware we're close to the top of the hour, but let's see how far we can go. Now, that's just talking about the nature of poor self-concept. Now, let's look at the positive side of all this. Number one, I'm going to present to us the model leader, and we're going to learn from his own experience. Number one, we say that when I say the model leader, I'm talking about, Yeshua al-Mashiach. We're talking about Jesus himself. And he says, it was referred to as the express image of his person. I was researching this, and it dawned on me that when you talk about the express image, you are talking about the complete and the direct representation of God's being, God's person, and God's personality. So, which means you can say is a carbon copy, is the exact replica. In fact, is the exactness of God. So anytime you see him, I think one of the reasons why God sent Jesus is that God was aware that we have forgotten ourselves so much that he wanted to give us a model so that we can see what to aspire to. Don't forget that we did a session on the fact that people don't do what people hear, but they do what they see. So God himself was modeling his image to us in that experience. So now let's learn from the model leader, which is Jesus himself. Now, his birthplace and the circumstances surrounding his birth did not affect his value. What could be worse than being born in a paddock, in a sheep paddock, where the first people that say hello to you are goats, and what they say is "bear, welcome," bear. There's nothing worse than that. And I know that none of us was born in a paddock, but this individual was born in a paddock, and I think that was deliberate, so that God can show that no matter how low you were born, you can still become the greatest. So his birthplace and circumstances around his birth did not affect his value. Secondly, his value did not originate from his national status or citizenship. Now, understand this, that at the time when Jesus was born in the Palestine area, the whole region was under colonization from Rome or by Rome. So they were seen as dogs. They would be referred to as dogs. They would be oppressed. They were oppressed. They were molested and all that. Now, he was born in this circumstance in a colony, yet his value was not determined by his national status or citizenship. I'm talking about his natural birth. Now, he was not afraid to express his identity. Anyone that cares to hear, he will say something like this: I am the sheep of the vine. I am the resurrection. I'm the light. I'm the light of the world. I am this, I am that. It was not like someone who was into himself. But, the model leader was not afraid to express his identity. And if I say I'm not who I am, then I'll be denying my heritage. So he associated with his heritage naturally. Now, he had an awareness and conviction of his source. So we say something like this: I'm not from here, I came from above. I came from God, and I go back into God. So you could see something that, because at this time, there was a lot of question about his identity. So he made clear that everyone that came across him, both those who value him and those who don't, understand very clearly what his source, what his origin, and what his value was. Another thing you will see from this model leader, this master leader, was that an awareness and conviction of his source, his heritage, and ability. So he would say, someone was sick, Jesus. He would say, yeah, I'm coming to heal him. He wasn't thinking, oh, let me go and pray so that I can heal. He just knew, I have the ability to heal. I have the leadership ability, and I can express it. I'm in no doubt about my ability to express my leadership potential. Again, he operated local, but had a global vision. Now, Jesus did his traveling around Galilee, Nazareth, and all of those places. Only once did he travel internationally to Egypt, but that was as a baby, so that was not his choice. But all of his adult life, he operated within a very small area, yet he knew that his product was global. So in other words, you can have a business in your house, in your kitchen, and that business can have a global future. You can operate maybe locally and no one knows you, but I would invite you to be aware that what you have has a global effect and global consequence. So I'm saying this so that you can know, if whatever you are, if you are in the medical practice, an accountant, you should know that there is a global destiny, a global potential in your current practice. As a matter of fact, even if you are doing something that you don't like now, understand that your job is not you. You are bigger than a job, because there is no job that can compensate you for your value. All right. Now, the question would be, did his vision go global or not? Well, you and I approve that the vision is indeed global. Now, his value and his self-worth was not determined by material possession. I'll leave that alone. I think that's self-explanatory. Now, his self-concept was not affected by the doubt and the challenges of the ignorant. People are challenging him a lot. They'll say, you must be a bastard because we don't even know your father. I mean, nothing could be worse than that. Is to say to someone, you're a bastard because you don't even know your father. Your birth is questionable. And yet he says, no, I am from God. As a matter of fact, in spite of their sharp criticism and, in fact, almost as a threat to his life, he did not deny his identity. Now, average and ignorant people could not withstand his self-concept because they wanted him to be just like them. Nobody's. But he says, no, I don't need to become like you. As a matter of fact, I'm from above, you are from below. Now, he needed no public approval or opinion to become or to remain himself. Now, I'm going to speak into that. And this is a truth that for you to become yourself, you have to declare independence from the culture that produced you. Now, the culture that produced us are physical. There's the physical culture. There is the educational culture. And there is also the culture that is currently having effect on us now. But for you to become who you are really born to be, to exercise your leadership spirit, you must cultivate an attitude that declares independence from the culture that produces you. Otherwise, no one will indeed know that there's something for you to deliver to the world. Right. Let's quickly look at vital attributes of leadership as we begin to round up. This is more like a summary. That number one, a true sense of your source, the spirit of a strong self-concept, a healthy self-image, self-confidence, and self-significance. I say self-confidence because you need courage to actually become yourself. Now, my observation is this. Nearly everyone, most people know that there's something I'm meant to do. In fact, some people are quite aware of the purpose of their life, and they can see their vision. They are saying it's coming in their imagination, but there is no courage to pursue what they see. So the pursuit of your purpose requires courage, which is where self-confidence comes in. I'm talking about a confidence that is derived from your source, from an awareness of your source. And that is what will lead to your self-significance. In very simple terms, when we talk about self-significance, we are talking about the expression of the spirit of leadership in bringing to pass what you have been purposed to deliver. Right? And then I'll round up here. And this might be an encouragement to my friends. Everyone on this call is so valuable to me. Everyone. Because my desire, my goal is to see everyone stepping into where they are created to be. So let me say this, that in redefining our leadership attitude, we should understand that, number one, you don't need a title to be a leader. You were born a leader. You are born with the leadership spirit. So a title is not relevant. As a matter of fact, a title only buys you time to actually begin to deliver your value. Because if you don't, and the time lapses, then you'll be found out. So I have three nuggets there. One is that whatever God demands, He supplies. Whatever God demands from you, please understand that the supply is already there. The supply only needs activation. Whatever God expects, He injects. So God does not expect what He has not put inside. When you when you go to your computer and you push the button, the on button, you expect that computer to come on because you know that the source of that computer, whether it's Apple or Dell or HP, they have injected all that it takes for that computer to work. God functions that way as well. And the thing is this, just in case you're thinking of doing something that you are convinced you have to do, understand that whatever God commands, he backs. God commits himself to his purposes in our lives. So whatever God demands from us, from you, from me, he also gives a backing for it. So you can rest assured that you are not alone. What you have to do is absolutely necessary, and it must be delivered, because you are a container of gifts that are not meant for you, but meant to be delivered to other people who must benefit from it. So not delivering those gifts to them is like a postman who has a parcel and takes it home, who has someone else's parcel and decides to use that parcel for himself or for herself. So it's theft. And thieves of other people's gifts. We must deliver them. Okay, and that's where I would like to rest my case. Now, let me just quickly announce to us that two major announcements. June the 30th, that is the last Thursday in this month, we are welcoming my very good friend, Dr. April Ripley from Georgia in the United States. April was the president, still is the president of the junior trustees in Dr. Miles' board, Dr. Miles Monroe's board. So April will be coming to speak to us in a fortnight, that is June the 30th. So I wanted to come along and just hear from April as she speaks to us. And then secondly, the 25th of June, that is Saturday, 25th of June, we'll be meeting together. I'm looking forward to that because that will be the first time we're meeting and seeing ourselves. So we're meeting together for a leadership breakfast. So I've sent the address on our WhatsApp group. So you can look at that again, and I would really love to see you there. The entire team at the Executive Network are looking forward to see you so that we can interact together and have three sessions. One we focus on kingdom principles. The second we focus on the family. Whether you are married or not, we focus on family. And the third we focus on leadership. So it's a 3-in-1 package meant to really delight and inspire everyone. So we look forward to seeing you. If you are not in Manchester and you want to come along, well, why not? But for those in Manchester, we really look forward to seeing you. So let me just appreciate and honor all of our friends. Hawa, Elizabeth, Benga from Canada. Of course, Hawa is in London. Elizabeth is here in Manchester. Adeshawa, Buki, and Buki. And then Dr. J from Ireland. My friend Nicholas. Good to see you all. And for anyone that I may not be seeing on the platform, Tenny was here a while ago. I think I had to prepare for another meeting, which we're having after this. Let me just say how much we honor and appreciate you. And we look forward to actually hearing your voice. When you are ready to speak, we are ready to hear. So prepare and come and impact us. We know that the leadership spirit in you is waiting for expression. That's why we're talking about the spirit of leadership, which is about cultivating the attitude that will give the leadership spirit the expression that it's been crying out for. So we honor you today. We are 3 minutes on top of the hour. Apologies for that. And we would want to stop here just to honor your time. And we look forward to seeing you next week when we talk about kingdom principles. And then in a fortnight, would host Dr. April Ripley. You can look her up on the internet. She's released a book, a very wonderful book, which was forwarded by Dr. Miles Monroe himself. So she's coming, fully loaded to be a blessing to us. And meanwhile, we know that you are almost ready. So anytime you're ready, just give me a call, and then we can arrange for you to come and speak to us. I'm waiting to hear from absolutely everyone. And the one thing I want to start doing is to bring everyone, as many people as can, join early enough on the platform so that we can have live interaction, even if we are not in the same location. So thank you very much once again, and I wish you a good day wherever you are. God bless. Right, the broadcast is officially over, but then so apologies for the malfunctioning of the internet. Well, we hope we can prevent that in the future. So good night, Buki, good night, Adeshawa, good night, Nicholas, good night, Elizabeth, good night, Dr. J, good night. And then all of our friends, Benga, good night to you. Good to have you tonight. Oh, Lami, Sister Lami, good to see you tonight again. Oh, I didn't see your name on time. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us. And good night to you as well. For anyone I didn't call by name, yes, I very much intended to. So I wish you all good night or good afternoon if you are not in our time zone. And thank you for joining us. God bless.